Hello, welcome to Whole Brain Man number 14. Um, uh, you may or may not know of a wonderful entertainer. I'm not sure if he's a comedic musician or a musical comedian, but his name's Tim Minchin. And there's a YouTube clip of him describing confirmation bias. Confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is when we encounter phenomena, information, and what our brains have to do is create meaning because obviously our brains do not touch the outside world directly. The brain is encased in the skull mostly. One would say that all of your entire neural system is the brain. So you have neurons, many neurons in your spinal cord, many neurons in your gut, in your heart. In fact, you have 2 million of them all over your skin, nerve endings, right? You got bits of brain in your ears and your eyes, all sending signals all the time. So just from the skin alone, you've got 2 million pieces of information a second going tick, 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 tick into your brain, right? So our neural system picks up through the senses data, information from the world around us, but also we have internal processes, metabolism, homeostasis dynamics, and that's also sending information to the brain as well, which is then responding to everything with glands, behaviors, and decisions, right? So when we encounter some information, our brain then has to conduct what might be described as the making of meaning or meaning making. There's a wonderful philosopher, poet, an Indian chap at the beginning of the last century called Tagore, who famously met Albert Einstein, and the media made a big thing of the poet getting on well with the scientist. But he wrote a book called Stray Birds, and it's made up of kind of one-liners, this book of poetry. It's wonderful to read. One of them was, we read the world wrong and say that it deceives us. Isn't that brilliant? We read the world wrong and say that it deceives us. And as Tim Minchin would say, that we are biased towards reading data or phenomena in a way that supports a belief or an idea that we already hold. Just keep that in mind for a moment. Now, have you ever been in a room, an office, a living room, a place where there's more than one person on a hot summer's day or just a hot day, and there's one fan in the room, one of these portable fans that is rotating, right? And on this hot day, when the fan is pointing directly at you, you get the air, the cool air. The relief of the fan touching your skin, right? But then, whoa, no, it's orientating away. And you got to watch it and you got to wait. You got to wait. You got to wait for it to come back because you're in a room and it's polite for everyone to get their turn, apparently. But it's polite for everyone to get their turn. And you can't insist, excuse me, make the fan point at me only and you lot swelter. That would be rude. So because of we are social creatures, we wait and then the fan comes around again. The momentary relief as the wind kind of touches your skin and then goes off. Now, as you know, if the fan's pointing right at you, you get the air. But if it's just very slightly tilted away, that stream of air goes that way, or the stream of air goes that way. And the same thing happens with sound. So, I used to be in bands in my early 20s. Great fun, really great fun. And in a rehearsal room, we'd have our amplifiers and things all pointing towards us in the middle so that, you can hear what everyone's playing and where everyone's going wrong or where you're going wrong. But you can hear it all, right? But when you have those amplifiers on a stage and you're presenting your music to the audience who are out in front of you, then that means instead of the speakers pointing to the musicians, then now the speakers are pointing straight out to the audience. And that means like the air of the fan, the sound is going mostly out in the direction of the orientation of the speaker, right? And that means if you're playing here and you've got your bass player friend there, his sound's going that way, not towards you, and you can't hear it. And as amplifiers got better through the 1960s and music became louder and louder, someone invented the idea of a public address system or PA system. And within that public address system, there's a line that comes out, an audio line that goes to wedge-shaped kind of speakers that sit on the floor at the front of the stage or in front of the musicians. These are called monitors because they monitor the sound. It's also called foldback as well, just if you want a bit of musical technical thing. So when the singer's in front of the monitor, he can hear not just himself, but he can hear the whole band, because the mix, as it were, the sound that's kind of balanced, the audience hearing through the large PA speakers, is being fed back to the band through these monitors. Around the when would it have been? Around the end of the 90s, early 2000s, someone came up with the idea of, instead of having to have the wedge-shaped things, of having what's called in-ear foldback. And so when you go and watch a live band now, you'll find that they have radio packs strapped to their belt with maybe a jacket over so you can't see it. And there's a radio signal coming from the desk, the PA desk, directly to their earbuds, so they can hear what's happening. And you might notice sometimes someone will say, they'll point to their guitar and go like that to the side of the stage, trying to catch the attention of the sound guy, saying that they want their instrument to sound louder in the mix in their ears, which they can do. They can isolate each person's different set of earbuds so that each person on stage can have the mix suited to their particular hearing. Right? So it might be the case that the singer needs to hear the chords of the piano and the rhythm guitar a little bit more loudly than the lead, perhaps, right? Because that's going to help him sing in the correct key. You get the idea. Now, I have no idea if you've seen pictures of the House of Commons when it's empty, but you may have seen clips of politicians talking on the news, and you may also have seen photographs of those scurrilous, lazy, ne'er-do-well politicians sleeping, giving it Zeds. We pay them to do our bidding, to fight our corner, to shape our world, to organise the ambulances and the police and the fire stations and fix the potholes in the road and all of that infrastructure stuff that's too much for an individual to do. So we have this networked system of people who do the infrastructure stuff that then means we can live our lives without having to attend to changing light bulbs and street lamps and things like that, unless that's your job, right? Yes. So, but they're sleeping. Rotten lot. Sleeping. God damn. But are they? Now, when you look at a picture of the Commons, hold on, I've got a picture of it here, without any people in it, just so you can see it as is. Right, so here are the benches of the Commons, and you can see up here cameras. They haven't been there since forever, obviously. This building is a redesign. There was a fire. I think the original hall from the 1600s still exists, but this was rebuilt around, I don't know if I can get this right. I think it was around 1860-ish. That's a guess on my part. But at some point in the latter part of the 19th century, there was a fire, and so it was rebuilt. And so this building has been around for a while. It has a historical value to it. The architecture has a certain iconography about it. It's the mother of parliaments. So you don't really want to kind of spoil it with too much modernity. So I think I'm right in saying it would have been around the end of the 80s that the BBC were allowed to broadcast radio from here. And then at some point in the 90s, cameras came in as well. So here you can see some of the cameras. They're obviously remote, so they can swivel and turn and things like this. I would imagine there are more out of our eye shot coming along here. And you can also see microphones dangling down from the ceiling if you've got a clear eye and a very good screen. But there are thread mics that kind of hang down from the ceiling, so it can pick up the voices of people who are speaking, no matter where they are in the chamber. And that's great. But how can the people who are there hear what's being said? Because if you're, say, tucked away in the corner up here on the far right-hand side, you're not going to be able to hear what someone's saying if they're at the end of that bench talking to the middle, because their voice is going to go this way, like the air from a fan, away from your ears, and you won't hear them. And if they're to the side of you, you can't lip read them either, because you can't see their face because they're looking away from you. Now, you'll notice there aren't big stacks of PA speakers here, right? There isn't a huge public address system installed in the Commons. So we, viewers, we can hear what's being said because the microphones are going to the broadcast mixing desk and that comes out through our screens. But what about the people who are actually there? They need to hear what's being said. How can you have a debate if you can't hear what's being said around you? Because not only have you got the fact that their voices are turned away from you, and their faces are turned away so you can't even lip read, but the people around you might be shuffling or fidgeting or rummaging through a bag to get something, or even whispering to each other or laughing at a joke they've made with each other, and then you're not going to hear what's being said. And sometimes, as you know, people might make a very short, sharp, quick, funny joke. Somehow, the whole Commons hears it, and they all laugh, ah, rah, 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 rah. Right? Then again, somebody might have a long, monologic speech, and they're going to take a long time talking about what they've got to say, which is going to take quite a long time for them to reach the end of their purpose and their point of being in this house today. Blah, 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 blah. Damn. So sometimes they might be saying something that's really interesting. It might have lots of information that you need to catch, right? How can you lean in to hear what's being said if they're so far away you can't even hear them? What a conundrum. But there are speakers in here, not a big PA stack like, when you go and see the Rolling Stones or AC/DC at Wembley. No. The pictures here, you see these things here, they're actually in the architecture of the benches. These are speakers. These are the speakers in the benches. Now, if the sound's coming out of that and you really need to pay attention, perhaps you're a little bit older and you've got some hearing loss, which is a common thing in people when they get older. They start to lose some of the treble frequencies. So in order to hear the consonants of the words, you might have to place your ear near the speaker, and you might have to lean back to get your ear there. And if it's a long thing, because you might not want to be distracted by people getting up and leaving and things, so you might close your eyes so you can focus. And if someone takes a picture of you doing that, what's the viewer of that photograph going to think when they see the picture of the person leaning back with their eyes closed while someone's speaking? Are they intently listening, focusing on the area where the sound is coming out? Option A. Or are they, option B, being a right lazy git, ne'er do well, sponging vulture who's kind of ripping off the taxpayer for everything we've got and they're not doing any good for any of us at all? I wonder what the truth of these positions is. Now, it might be the case that some politicians are like leeches, vultures, etc., who are just sponging and self aggrandizing their own world. Then again, it might also be the case that some of them can't hear what's being said and they want to catch what's being said because they think it's important. And so they lean back to get the sound. There's a very high chance that the reality is some kind of mixture of the two, right? But whichever one you think it is, are you correct? Or is it your confirmation bias that's enabling you to read accurately or misread? I think it's impossible to say. I think it's actually a mixture, right? But I just wanted to kind of present this as an example of where we can find ourselves falling into confirmation bias with a simple illustration, right? Which might also perhaps say something about the spirit of fairness as well, you know. And I'm quite sure that we all have a desire to be correct and accurate in our assumptions and conclusions, do we not? Thank you for your time, and I'll see you next time on the Thoughts of a Wholeberry Man. Take very good care of you. Bye.